Tav Sadi Tes Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the top at the 2 dots. So the Mishnah said that a person is in a Rishus Yachid, for instance, on a rooftop, and he is now bending over and he wants to move something, being told something in the Rishus Rabbim, he can, but he cannot bring it from beyond the Dalet Amas. So he can't be Mamrid Dalet Amas, because then he's being Mamrid Dalet Amas in the Rishus Rabbim. He could, even though he's standing in the Rishus Yachid, move it in the Rishus Rabbim, but not beyond the Dalet Amas. So he cannot move it beyond the Dalet Amas. He can't move it 4 amas from the original location. So that implies that if he did that, it would be an Isser D'Oraisa. It would be an Isser D'Oraisa of being Maver Dalet Amas, Rishus Rabbim, and Barabim, and he would be Chayiv Achatas. So let's bring a right to this for Rava. If a person is Maver Dalet Amas, Rishus Rabbim, V'hivir Derech Olav, and he brought it over his head, he lifted it over 10 tefachim high, meaning he picked it up in the Rishus Rabbim, and then he raised it so it's 10 tefachim high, so that is therefore not the avir of the Rishus Rabbim, it's in the avir, the airspace of a mokim petur. Nevertheless, he's chayiv. Even though it passed through the airspace of a mokim petur, nevertheless, he's chayiv achatas, because he picked it up from one spot in the Rishus Rabbim and it was transported and put down to a spot 4 amas further beyond that original spot in the Rishus Rabbim, even though it passed through the airspace of the Malkum Patur. Now here also we're assuming that if he was on the rooftop, therefore if he picked it up from the Rishus Rabbim, he, in all probability, he raised it up to where his level was, or close to his level, which is more than 10 tefachim above the ground of the Rishus Rabbim. It's the airspace of a Malkum Patur. So that is a similar case to Rava, and therefore let's bring a raya that we're medayik over here, how Haitzi Chayiv Chatas, it's a raya to Rava's din. The Gemara says, no, it's not a raya. Miktane Haitzi Chayiv Chatas. It doesn't say that he's Haitzi Chayiv Chatas, Tilmim Haitzi Patra V'Laser. It just says that he should not be Bavach Lo Yaitzi Chutz. It doesned say he was Haitzi Chutz Chayiv Chatas. Maybe all that it means is that you cannot do it. If he did, it's also Midrabanan. Maybe it's not a raya to Rava. Maybe if he did it, he would not be Chayiv Chatas, but we do not allow him to do this midrabanan, because if we allow him to do it above 10 tefachim, he might be mavrit below 10 tefachim, which would be an Isser D'Oraisa. So therefore we have no raya. Ikadamre, some say a different version, that initially wanted to say, well, it doesn't say Chayiv Chatas, that it's only an Isser D'Orabanan. So let us say therefore that it's a kashan Rava. Zoma Rava Maver Mitchilas Daled Seif Daled Vehevi Der Holav Chayev. Rava says if he brings it in the airspace above, then he's chayev. And here it's mashma, he's not chayev, it's only an Isser Rabbanan. The Gemara says no, Miktana Haitzi Potter Velosa. It doesn't say it's also Midrabanan. Dilim Haitzi Chayiv Chatas. Maybe it means over here he's Chayiv Chatas, and then it is a raya for Rava. So you can't bring a raya one way or the other. Then the Mishnah continued and says that Lo Yamid Adam Rishus Yachid, a person should stand in Rishus Yachid and be Mashin in the Rishus Rabbim, or vice versa. Omar Rav Yosef, Ishtin V'Rok Chayiv Chatas. If he's Mashin or if he's Rok, if he spits, he's Chayiv Chatas. It's considered like he transported the item from the one Rishus to the other. So if he's in the Rishus Yachid, he spits into the Rishus Rabbim, he would transport it into the other Rishus, and he's Chayiv Chatas. The Rif points out over here that Chayiv Chatas, this must be going according to the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, who holds a Malach Shein Tzricha Legufa, you're Chayiv. Because over here, it's a Malach Shein Tzricha Legufa. He doesn't want the Roik to be Davka in Rishus Rabbim, he just wants it to be out of his Rishus Yachid. So that's a Malach Shein Tzricha Legufa. Now, by saying over here that Ishtan Rav Yosef says Ishtan Rav Chayiv Chatas, he must be going according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Malach Shein Tzricha Legufa is Chayiv. Frank, the beginning of Gemara Hakar of Yosef Seir Chayv Habin and Akir Vanoch Me'al Gabi Makam Dalid. Well, we know that to be Maitzi and to be Machnis, you have to remove the item from a place where resting was a Makam Dalid and place it on a maniach, on a place which is a Makam Dalid, a Chashuv place. Vileka, and over here, you don't have that. He has it from his mouth. It's not Dalid al Dalid. The reik is in his mouth. It's not a Makam Dalid al Dalid. Morea explains, even though normally you need a Makam Dalid al Dalid, but over here, the fact that he has a requirement and he needs it, he wants it to be leaving this place. It's not haphazard. It gives it a chashivus, and therefore he's chayiv, even though it's not a Makam Dalid, but the machshava, the desire and the need to have it removed from this place. And therefore that gives it a chashiv Makam Dalid. Because if you don't say that, Rava said that in a case that Zorak, if a person threw something, and it landed in the dog of the mouth or in a furnace. So he picked up something in the Rishus Harabim, he threw a Dalet Amas in the Rishus Harabim, and it landed in the mouth of the dog. Let's say it was some food, or it landed in something that was in the furnace, some flammable material. Chayiv Chatas. So he says, Rava says, he's Chayiv Chatas. Vabin and Hanach al Gabi Makam Dalid. Well, it's not a Makam Dalid. The mouth of the dog is not Makam Dalid. So why are you Chayiv? Veleka, and it's not Dalid over here. You don't have that here. Ella, what's the pshat? Ella Machshavta Mashli Makam. The fact that he intends it specifically to land in this place in the mouth of the dog gives it a chashivas. Is machshavta mashlei makam. Achnami machshavta mashlei makam. Here also his intent gives it the chashivas, and we treat it therefore as a makam dalid al dalid. Taisus explains. He says that it's not sufficient that his machshava, that simply that he intends it to land in this place. It has a chashivas form. For instance, he throws it in the mouth of the dog because he wants to feed the dog, so he wants the dafka to land here and not somewhere else. He wants to throw it in the piyik of the kivshan, he wants it to be burnt there. So not only that he intended that it should land there, but he has a specific intent that he wants the dafka there and not somewhere else. That gives it a chashivas, and it's considered makam dalid al dalid. B'yirav, has a shaila. So we're talking about being mashten. Who b'shus hayachid? If he is standing in the rishus hayachid, and he's being mashten into the rishus harabim, u piyama b'shus harabim. But the piyama is in the rishus harabim. So at where the shetan is, where the meiraglaim, where it leaves the body. It leaves it in the Rishus Harabim. It's not leaving it in the Rishus Hayachid. Now, where it leaves from the bladder, for instance, that is in the Rishus Hayachid. But when it exits the goof, it's in the Rishus Harabim. So how do we view it? Basar Akira Azlinan. Do we say that we go bas for the Akira, the original position, and therefore he should be chayiv, or he should be chayiv for this because it's leaving a makam of a rishus hayach and going to rishus harabim, so it's also either chayiv or also because it's leaving the rishus hayach. Do we view it from the point where it exits the original place in the body, or do we view it from the point of view of when it leaves the body and reaches and now is in the exterior to the body, which the piyam is in the Rishus Harabim. If we view it from that vantage point, then it left a Rishus Harabim and it landed in Rishus Harabim. It didn't leave in Rishus Hayachid. So if we view it from the Akira, where the meraglaim was dislodged from the interior of the body, then it left the Rishus Hayachid and landed in the Rishus Harabim. But if we view it from the point where it exited the body, the piyama, then it left the Rishus Harabim and landed in the Rishus Harabim. It didn't leave from the Rishus Hayachid. Teku, it's a teku. Then it says, "V'chein lo yorag," a person should not also spit. And Rav Yehuda said in the Mishnah that if a person walks dalet amas, Rav Yehuda says, "Af mishin nitl esruk b'fiv lo yahalach harba amas ad yorag." Once the saliva has been dislodged in his mouth, then he can't walk Dalit Amos until he spits it out, because if he does, it's considered like carrying the saliva. It's like carrying the saliva. So, for example, do you mean to say that he's chayav and it's considered like carrying, even though he didn't swirl it out and swirl it in his mouth, even though he didn't first swirl it in his mouth? We learned in a Mishnah, if a person was eating a figs of truma and his hands were not washed, so therefore, if the figs had a hechshel kabel tuma, if they came into contact with liquid first, and his hands touched the figs, then they would passel the figs. They would bring tuma to it. Therefore, if he did it in such a case, he was eating the figs of truma with unwashed hands, and he put his hand in his mouth to remove a stone. Rameir says it's tam, because the saliva in his mouth is considered a liquid, it's considered a mashka, and it's makshir the figs, and it's makshir the kabel tuma, its hands are not washed, so it's matam of the figs. Rav Yesi matar. Rav Yesi says it's tor. The saliva in the mouth is not yet considered a liquid, only when it leaves the mouth. Rav Yehuda is machalik as follows. He says, Hipich ba'al tomim. If he already had swirled the saliva in his mouth, then it's already considered to be independent of the body, so to speak, it's considered to be a mashke. And Hipich ba'tor, but if he had not yet swirled in his mouth, it still has the din of being part of the body and not a mashke. It's still considered part of the body and not a mashke. It's not mashke that fixed the kabel tuma and their tor. So what do we see over here? We see over here that Rabbi Yehuda says if he has not been mahapich, if he has not yet swirled the saliva in his mouth, it's still considered part of the body. And therefore, he should not be chayev, and it should not be also over here for walking Dalit Amos in the Shusa Rabim either. It's all part of his body. It's not like he's carrying an independent item. We must say that Rav Yehuda changed his opinion. The way Rashi learns Mukhlef Zashita is that, as opposed to most places where we say Mukhlef Zashita means we reverse the opinions of the Tanoim and exchange one opinion of the Tana for a different Tana. Here it means that Rav Yehuda, he says that Rav Yehuda himself, that he changed his opinion. That he originally held that even without being mahapich is considered to be independent, and then he changed it and he said no, you have to be mahapich. Reish Lakish Amar L'Olam Loitach. No, you don't say that. Have to say that he reversed his opinion. He says L'Olam Tavachacha B'Ma'iskin and B'Kichai. What we're talking over here is we're not talking about saliva. In our Mishnah, what we're talking about is phlegm, and a person in the phlegm in his mouth, it's oimed to be spit out right away by saliva. We say that if he hasn't been mahapech, perhaps he'll swallow it. It's not oimed to be ejected from the mouth immediately. Therefore, it's still considered part of the body. When he's mahapech with it, then it's considered to be independent. He's going to spit it out. It's not part of the body. But by kichai, then even without that, it's immediately aimed to be ejected from the body, and it's not considered part of the body, and it's considered to be independent. So over here in our Mishnah, even if he's not bahapich, but we're talking about kichai. The Gemara Batanya, we learned in a Brisa of Yehuda, Aimer kichai v'nitlash. A person says, Rabbi Yehuda says rather, that if there's kichai, and it was in his mouth, it was nitlash, it collected in his mouth, and he walks Dalit Amos, then he's chayiv, then it's also if he does that. So my love, raik v'nitlash, doesn't this mean that it refers to raik as well? It's a little bit difficult in this girsa that we have in the Gemara. It says kichai. Why should we assume that it's raik? There is another girsa that's brought down, that the Dukei Seifim brings down, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer kichai v'roika, that if a person walks kichai v'roika, so there it equates kicha v'reicha. So here we understand the kasha better. It's equating the two, and just like we say by kicha we say even if it's not mahapech, so too we should say by roik even though it's not mahapech. When it says like kicha v'nitlish, it means dafka kicha v'nitlish if the kicha was a kicha v'nitlish and it was collected. But if it would be that roikai, you would have to be mahapech. It would only be if it would be mahapech first. I break the Gemara about Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Amar Kicha Sheniltash V'chein Roicha Shenitlash. He says they're both the same Lo Yahal Dalet Amas Hajiyark. He can't walk Dalet Amas unless he spits it out first. Chavarta Gadashin Mikara that it's Muchlevas Ashit. Omer Reish Lo Kicha Kiach Bifnei Rabbi Chaim Misa. If a person coughs up phlegm in front of his Rebbe, he's not showing proper respect. He's Chaim Misa Shenemar Kol Masane Avu Mavis. Those who hate me, then who hate the Torah, love Misa, love death. Al Tikrul Masanai. Don't say L'Masanai that it's written who hate me, Ela L'Masniai, that L'Masniai that who cause others to hate me. So therefore, if a Talmud Chacham he acts in such a way that's not bekovedik away, and then people will be mivaza Talmid Chachamim. So if he does it in such a way, therefore he causes disrespect, he causes people to hate the Torah, hate Talmid Chachamim, hate Torah. So he's Chaim Misa, the Gemara. Well, what should he do? V'amen is honest. He's an honest. He had to cough up. What could he do? The Gemara says what we mean over here, in this case, is not simply coughing up. We mean kiach v'rak kamina. Not only coughed, but he spat it out. So it's disgusting for other people. So it's mias for them, and it causes a bizoyin for the Torah and Talmid Chacham, causes people to hate Talmid Chacham. He's chayiv misa in such a case. Zok the Mishnah, lo yamed on the rishus yachid v'yish the rishus harabim. A person should not stand in the rishus yachid and lean over and drink in the rishus harabim, or rishus harabim v'yish the rishus yachid, or the other conversely, he should not stand in the rishus harabim, bend over and drink in the rishus yachid. We're afraid that he'll bring the item, he'll bring the water to him, to the rishus that he is, and he'll be transferring from one rishus to the other. Unless he is his head and most of his body is in the same rishus as the item that he's drinking. Unless he's bent over and most of his body is in that the same rishus, then we won't be concerned or not geyser. But otherwise, it's also because we're geyser that he'll bring the item to where he is. The chayin begas, and the same applies to a wine press. The Gemara will discuss what are we talking about with the wine press. Zok the Gemara, Reisha Rabbanan, v'sefer of Meir. It seems to be the Reisha, the previous Mishnah, that says that a person could be in a rishus yachid and be metaltal in rishus harabim, and apparently we're not concerned that he'll bring the item to where he is, goes according to the Rabbanan. The Seif and our Mishnah seems to be going according to Rameir, that we learn Rameir says, we have the Mishnah in Daf Kuf Aleph, that he says it is also to be metaltal in a different rishus. We are concerned that he might bring the item to him. So it seemed to be very unusual that the previous mission, the Reisha, is Rabbanan. Here we're going according to Rameir. Amar Rav Yosef. No, it's not over here Dafka according to Rameir. Our Mishnah is L'kuliyama b'chafesim shetzrichim loy. We're talking about something that a person needs. But and everyone would agree, the Rabbanan would also agree, that in something like this case over here, we're talking about water. He has a great need for it. So here, we are concerned he'll bring it to him, because it's Shrichim Lai, where the Rabbanan said you can be metaltal in the separate rishus, where it's an item that's not so needed. But over here, it's an item which is needed, even the Rabbanan will be geyser. Iboilu karmelis mai. This over here, this iser of being bending over or leaning over into a different rishus, and it's also to drink. What would be the din by a karmelis? Would be aserit in the karmelis as well, or only if it's in rishus harabim or in rishus yachid. Now it's important to point out that Rashi mentions that when he drinks in the other rishus, that there's no iser over here. We're not talking about an iser of transporting from one rishus to the other, as for instance in the previous Mishnah by Roik or being mashten, where it leaves his body and it goes into another rishus. Or perhaps you'll say over here it should be considered directly transporting it to the other rishus because he's drinking, and now it rests in his stomach, and his stomach is in the different rishus. So, for instance, if he bends over in the rishus harabim and he drinks, and now the water now it's in his stomach, which is in rishus yachid, why don't we consider that transferring directly into the other rishus? Rashi says no, because it's noch first, it rests in his mouth, so it's not considered coming from the rishus harabim to the rishus yachid. It's rested in his mouth first, and therefore it's not coming directly. It stopped first in his mouth. So therefore it is considered to be now in his mouth, and come from his mouth coming to his body. So the question over here is that what is the din by a karmelis? Do we answer by a karmelis as well? Amar Abaye, Abaye says it's the same. Just like we say you can't drink from the rishus harabim, and now bend over to the rishus harabim, his body's in the rishus yachid, because we are afraid that he might bring it to him. By a karmelis also, he's geyser that he might bring it to him, to where he is. Amar Rava says, no, he goof exer, but on nikum and exer. This karmelis, the whole institution of a karmelis is exer darabanan. So over here, this is only exer that he might bring it to him. He might bring it to him, which is exer. So it's exer. We have a principle that we're not guys exer. Rava has a very stark taina on Abaya, how Abaya learns. So we have different terutzim in the Rishonim. Taisus over here says, Taisus learns on Daf Tzadi Ches that the difference over here is this something that it's very shchiach, it's very easy to forget and bring it to him. In such a case, would be geyser by a karmelis as well. Ritva says it's kula chara gzeira. It's all part and parcel of the gzeira of that he might bring it into the rishus harabim. We consider it as one broad gzeira. It's not a special gzeira for a karmelis. It's incorporated in the gzeira of a rishus harabim, rishus yachid. Taisus and Shabbos says that Haitzah is a malacha grua. People don't readily understand that Haitzah is also, because it's not really transforming the item, you're not changing the item, it's not like a typical malacha, and therefore we make more churmas on Haitzah. Omer Abayim, what's my raya that we'll be geyser even by a karmelis b'niktani? Because the Mishnah says v'chein begas. It says in our Mishnah v'chein begas. Now, what's being added by the wine press? What do we want to indicate with this wine press? So therefore, we must be talking about the first case is talking about a rishus yachid to rishus harabim, and must be the case over here. The gas is a karmelis, and therefore it says over here, he cannot stand in the rishus harabim, bend over to the wine press and drink the wine. So, doesn't the Mishnah, otherwise, what is the whole purpose of mentioning the wine press? Isn't that to indicate that the gezerah is by a karmelis as well? But Rava says no. The gas has nothing to do with this case over here with a karmelis. Rava Amar Linyan Meiser. What it's talking about is the halacha of Meiser. It's not related to at all to Hilchos Shabbos. It's a separate halacha about leaning over. We're talking about over here about leaning over from one rishus to another. Now that has relevance to the halacha of Meiser. What's the relevance? In Meiser we say as follows: something which is loy nigmar malachta, that is not the processing, is not being finished. You are allowed to eat from that without being mafresh the trumas and Meisers. It's not nigmar malachta. There's no chiv yet of trumas and Meiser. Rabbanan said we only allow an achilas arai, a snack, but not an achilas keva, but not a meal. Now, the question over here is, if a person leans over and drinks from the wine press, is that mutter or not? So meaning, therefore, what we want to indicate over here is that the Mishnah says you cannot, Gabi Hilchos Shabbos, lean over and drink in another rishus. Similarly, what Meir is saying is that you cannot lean over and drink in a wine press, because just like by Shabbos we're afraid that you'll bring it to you and drink in the rishus where you are. If you lean over and drink in the wine press, we're afraid that you'll bring the cup of wine to where you are, and therefore you're not drinking in the wine press, and it's not a snack, it's a chilas keva. When we say, when you are leaning over and drinking on the wine press, that is an achilas arai. So there you're allowed to eat or drink without being mafish the maasers. But if you bring the wine to where you are, it's no longer on the wine press. It's been removed from the wine press, so the processing has been completed. So you can't drink it without being mafish maasers. Similarly, the Mishnah says, "V'chein begas," you can't lean over and drink on the wine press, even though drinking on the wine press, if you're standing there by the wine press and drinking, it's mutter because it's an achilas arai. It's only a snack. It's not achilas keva. But leaning over and drinking, you cannot, because you might bring it to where you are. So therefore, what it means is that it's it's v'chein begas linyan meiser. That the halacha of the wine press is linyan meiser. This nan we learned in the Mishnah. So we learned in the Mishnah, the meiser says sheisim alagas. You're allowed to drink the wine on a wine press. Bein b'chamin, bein b'tzoinen, whether it is diluted with warm water or with cold water, upater divramer, and your potter, because we don't consider it to be an achilas keva, it's considered an achilas arai, and what you don't drink, you'll pour back into the gas. So it's not considered to be an achilas keva. It's still considered to be that it's part of the wine press. So that's not considered to be achilas keva and your potter. He says that no, once you've diluted it, then it's considered to be no longer drinking on the wine press. We don't assume that you will pour back the remainder. It's considered to be the regular drinking of wine. It's achilas keva and your chayiv. The Chomer distinguished say on the chamin you're chayiv, because you won't pour back the remainder, because that ruins the wine. Warm water will ruin the rest of the wine, so you won't pour it back. So that's considered achilas keva. So you have to be mafish maasers first. But on soinen, if you diluted it with cold water, then it's not considered to be achilas arai, because the remainder you'll put back into the press. Now, we over here say that you can, the Mishnah therefore is saying that drinking the wine over the wine press is permitted, but if you are leaning over and drinking it, then it's also because we're afraid that we're bringing it to you. So the Mishnah will be going according to Rav, who says that the drinking on the wine press is mutter, but leaning over and drinking over there is also, because then you might take it out of the wine press and bring it to where you are, and that would be considered achilas keva and your chayiv ma'aser. So just like by Shabbos you can't lean over and drink because we're afraid we'll bring it to you, by similarly l'gavei ma'aser v'chein begas, you also can't lean over and drink, because even though on the wine press it's achilas arai, and it's mutter without taking the maasers, but we're afraid that you'll bring it to where you are, where there is no longer achilas arai, and you can't drink it without maasers, so therefore it's also.